Once a global powerhouse, the UK is facing an economic reality that's hard to ignore. Inflation is soaring at 6.8%. Public services are stretched thin, and the pound has dropped by 10% in recent years. Today, we're asking the question on everyone's mind: is the UK headed toward a collapsed economy? For centuries, the UK stood as one of the world's leading economies, a beacon of trade and financial stability. But in recent years, the country's economic health has taken a turn for the worse. Inflation has hit its highest level in over 40 years at 6.8%, causing living costs to surge, while GDP growth has slowed to 0.2% in the second quarter of 2023. Public debt has grown rapidly to £2.5 trillion, representing over 100.1% of GDP, and consumer confidence is at an all-time low. Economic experts have warned that the country may be on the edge of a deeper recession, one that could take years to recover from. But it wasn't always this way. Historically, the UK was a driving force in global finance and trade. The British pound was one of the most stable currencies in the world, and London was seen as a financial capital. But today, as the global economic environment has become more volatile, the cracks in the UK's foundation have begun to show. So how did we get here? One of the major turning points in the UK's economic decline was Brexit. When the UK voted to leave the European Union in 2016, it set off a chain of economic events that are still playing out today. The promise of independence from EU regulations and control over immigration quickly gave way to the harsh reality of higher trade barriers, more red tape, and diminished access to the EU's vast market. UK exports to the EU have fallen by 15% since 2016, and 38% of small businesses have faced severe supply chain disruptions. Industries like manufacturing and farming, which relied heavily on trade with the EU, have seen production costs rise and export opportunities shrink. New tariffs have added millions in costs, and supply chains have been disrupted. For example, companies that once exported to Europe are now facing costly delays, higher taxes, and in some cases, the complete collapse of trade relationships. Additionally, financial services, a major pillar of the UK's economy, lost their passporting rights, which allowed firms to operate freely across Europe. The financial services industry, which once contributed £132 billion annually, has taken a hit, with many companies shifting jobs and offices to other EU countries. The estimated loss to the sector is over £9 billion. The loss of this access to the single market has been a significant blow to the UK's financial sector, contributing to the wider economic downturn. Beyond Brexit, global events have only deepened the UK's economic woes. The energy crisis has had a particularly devastating effect on households and businesses. With the war in Ukraine and the global energy crunch, energy prices have skyrocketed. Energy bills alone have risen by 54% in 2022, with the average household bill now over £2,500 per year. Ordinary citizens are feeling the pinch, with heating bills doubling or even tripling in some cases. And it's not just energy. Inflation across all sectors, food, fuel, and housing, has pushed the cost of living to unprecedented levels. Food prices have surged by 12.6%, and 20% of households report having to cut back on essentials like heating just to afford their rent or mortgage. Many families are forced to choose between heating their homes or putting food on the table. The pressure on everyday citizens is immense, and public protests have erupted over rising costs and declining living standards. While wages have increased in some sectors, they've failed to keep pace with inflation. This has left millions of workers, particularly in low-wage sectors, worse off. The cost of buying a home in the UK is out of reach for most young people, with average property prices now at £290,000, and rental prices have also skyrocketed, adding to the sense of economic insecurity. Political instability has also played a major role in the country's current situation. The UK has seen a rapid turnover of prime ministers and leadership changes in recent years, creating uncertainty and slowing economic recovery efforts. With each change in leadership, new policies are introduced, only to be reversed by the next administration. Since 2016, the UK has gone through 5 prime ministers, each leaving the country more divided than the last. This has also led to underfunding of critical public services, most notably the National Health Service, NHS. The NHS, once a symbol of Britain's strength, is now under immense pressure. Hospitals are overcrowded, staff are overworked, and patients are facing long waiting times for even the most basic treatments. Today, over 7.5 million patients are on waiting lists, with no immediate relief in sight. Similarly, the education system has been hit hard by budget cuts, and public transport systems are struggling to keep up with demand. So, is the UK really on the verge of collapse? While the economic outlook is certainly challenging, it's not all doom and gloom. The UK remains a global hub for innovation, particularly in sectors like technology, fintech, and creative industries. The country's startup culture is still thriving, and the tech sector alone is valued at over £170 billion, providing hope that these sectors can help drive economic recovery. There's also talk of new trade deals with countries outside the EU, like the United States, Australia, and India, which could help offset some of the economic damage caused by Brexit. However, recovery will require more than just trade agreements. Analysts predict that it could take up to a decade for the UK to recover fully. The government will need to invest heavily in infrastructure, education, and healthcare to rebuild public confidence and get the economy back on track. The bottom line is, the UK is at a crossroads. The challenges it faces are immense, from rising inflation and political instability to the fallout from Brexit and the energy crisis. Whether the UK can recover its former economic strength remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: the road ahead won't be easy.